Hello again everybody, it's Tara here from Tiny Teas, and today we are going down into the woods because I am going to tell you the story of Little Red Riding Hood, a classic children's fairy tale. Now we are going to need some costumes. I'm going to need to get my red cloak. Have you got yours? Oh, perfect! Now I can act out the part of Little Red Riding Hood. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who was loved by everybody that knew her. Her grandmother was so fond of her that she would always give her presents. One day, she made the little girl a beautiful red velvet cape. And the little girl loved it so much that she wouldn't go anywhere without wearing it. And so they called her Little Red Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood lived with her mother and father in a little cottage near the woods. Her father worked all day long and he was a woodcutter. Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother lived just about a mile away, through the forest and through a little path. And every day, Little Red Riding Hood went to visit her grandmother. She would skip along the path, through the forest, and into her grandmother's cottage, which was surrounded by large oak trees. One day, Little Red Riding Hood's mother called her and said, "Little Red Riding Hood, I have put some cakes in your basket. I would like you to take them to your grandmother. She is very ill and it will make her feel better. Keep to the path and don't wander off. And if I've told you once, Little Red, I've told you 100 times. Don't talk to strangers." "I shall take great care," said Little Red Riding Hood, and she began skipping along the path through the woods. Before she had got very far along the path through the forest, Little Red Riding Hood met a wolf. She had never seen a wolf before, and she didn't know what this wicked creature really was. She thought it might be a large dog, and so she wasn't scared of him. Right then, I think I am going to need to act out the part of the wolf. Are you ready, everybody? 1, 2, 3. Oh, perfect. Okay. "Good morning, Little Red Riding Hood," said the wolf. "Good morning, sir," she replied. "And where are you going so early in the morning?" asked the wolf. "Oh, I'm going to my grandmother's," she replied. "And what have you got in your basket?" "Oh, I've got some cakes," said Little Red Riding Hood. "My grandmother is ill, and so I'm going to her house." "And where does your grandmother live?" "Oh, about another half a mile into the woods. Her cottage is by some large oak trees." And the wolf thought to himself, "What a tender young creature this is! She will make a more juicy mouthful than the old woman. But if I am cunning, I can gobble them both up." The wolf strolled alongside Little Red Riding Hood for a little while, chatting to her and pointing out all of the things in the forest. Let's have a look through the forest, everybody. Look at all the pretty flowers under the trees. Aren't they beautiful? And can you hear the birds singing? You should stop and enjoy these things instead of walking along the path. And then the wolf said goodbye to Little Red Riding Hood. And he quickly set off into the grandmother's cottage. Little Red Riding Hood did as the wolf had suggested and looked around her. The forest was indeed a lovely place, and the sunbeams danced through the trees. And the ground was carpeted with beautiful flowers, and the birds sang merrily. She also saw some squirrels, some hedgehogs, some bunny rabbits, some foxes and some butterflies. I shall pick a bunch of fresh flowers for my grandmother, thought Little Red Riding Hood. They will make her get better. But by now, the wolf had reached the grandmother's cottage and he knocked at the door. Who's there? Little Red Riding Hood, I brought you some cakes. Ah, yes, pull the latch and come upstairs, dear. The wolf pressed the latch, opened the door and walked straight in. And without saying a word, he went straight into the grandmother's bed and gobbled her up with one mouthful. And then he put on one of her night dresses and a nightcap. And then he got into her bed and drew the curtains. And then he waited for Little Red Riding Hood. Meanwhile, Little Red Riding Hood had wandered far from the path, for the loveliest flowers always seem the furthest away. And when she had gathered so many flowers that her arms were full, she began to think again of her grandmother, lying in bed ill. So she went to see her grandmother. Ready, everybody? Let's skip along. When Little Red Riding Hood arrived at her grandmother's cottage, she was surprised to see the door wide open. Grandmother? Good morning, she called, but she got no reply. Then Little Red Riding Hood began to feel rather uneasy, and she went upstairs to her grandmother's bed. The curtains were drawn, and there lay her grandmother, with a cap pulled down to her eyes and her bedclothes pulled up to her chin, looking very strange. Grandmother, what big eyes you have. All the better to see you with, my dear. Oh, grandmother, what big hands you have. All the better to hug you with, my dear. Oh, grandmother, what a big mouth you have. All the better to eat you with. Oh my goodness, the wolf was so wicked and mean. He gobbled up Little Red Riding Hood and he climbed into bed with a very full tummy and lay down to fall asleep. But his snoring was so loud it shook the whole cottage. Well, just at that time, Little Red Riding Hood's father was in the woods nearby cutting some wood, and he heard the loud snores coming from the cottage. Shh, shh. And he went to go into the cottage to see why Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother was snoring so loudly. But when he got up to the bed, he saw the wolf lying there. "You wicked creature," he said. "I have long waited to get my hands on you." And he pulled out his axe and he killed the wolf. But suddenly remembered that Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother might be in there and he might have gobbled her up whole. So he had to cut open the wolf, hoping to find her grandmother. But to his surprise, not only did grandmother step out, but so did Little Red Riding Hood. "Oh, how frightened I was," said Little Red Riding Hood, and she was so grateful that her father had come to the rescue. They put her grandmother back in her bed and gave her cakes, and soon after she was feeling much better. When they returned home and they told Little Red Riding Hood's mother all about the adventure that they'd had, Little Red Riding Hood promised, "As long as I live," she said, "I shall never ever leave the forest path ever again, especially when you'd warned me not to, and I'll never ever talk to strangers." The end. Thank you everybody for watching this story today. I hope you enjoyed it. And remember to click subscribe so that you can watch all of the other storytelling videos. I'll see you soon.